My fiancée said she was having dinner with coworkers. 2 hours later, my sister sent me a video of her on a bar counter making out with two guys while the crowd chanted. When I walked into the bar, and she saw me pushing through the crowd. The message came in the late afternoon, casual enough to feel rehearsed. Vera said she was having dinner with coworkers and that it would probably run late because the team had finally wrapped a stressful project. She added a smiley face earlier in the day, but by the time evening settled in, the message stood alone on my screen, clean and confident, like it had been typed once and never reconsidered. We had been planning our wedding for months, arguing about flowers, venues, guest lists, and money in the way couples do when the pressure starts to squeeze. Nothing explosive, nothing dramatic, just that steady friction that comes from two people pretending they are not exhausted. Her dinner did not feel suspicious at first. If anything, it felt convenient. I ordered takeout, answered emails, and tried to enjoy the rare quiet. An hour passed, then another. I noticed the silence before I noticed the time. Vera usually checked in, even briefly, even with a tired emoji or a quick note saying she was still alive. That night there was nothing. No updates. No missed calls. Just the original message sitting there like a sealed envelope. At a little past 9, my phone buzzed again. This time it was not her. It was my sister, Yana. The message did not come with context. No warning, no explanation, no lead-in. Just a video file and a single line that said, "I am sorry you had to see this from me." I opened it without thinking. The camera shook at first, the way phones do in crowded places, then steadied enough for me to recognize the bar immediately. It was not subtle. Loud music, neon lights, bodies pressed together. The kind of place that did not pretend to be anything but exactly what it was. The camera angle shifted upward, and that was when I saw her. Vera was standing on the bar counter, not dancing near it, not leaning against it, standing on it, barefoot, her dress riding higher than it ever did when we went out together. One man was pressed against her front, another behind her, their hands where they had no business being. Her head tilted back as if the noise alone could carry her somewhere else. The crowd below was chanting, voices layered and messy. Phones held high like this was entertainment worth saving. Then she kissed them. Not quickly, not as a joke. It was deliberate, unembarrassed, performed for the room. The camera zoomed slightly, maybe by accident, maybe not. I could see her face clearly enough to recognize the expression. It was not confusion. It was not drunken surprise. It was comfort, familiarity, control. I watched the video twice. Not because I needed confirmation, but because my brain refused to accept what my eyes had already cataloged in detail. By the third time, I noticed Yana's reflection in a mirror behind the bar, her phone angled up, her mouth tight, her body still. She had not staged this. She had not hunted it down. She had walked into it. I paused the video and checked the timestamp. It had been recorded less than 10 minutes earlier. I did not call Vera. I did not text her. I stood up, put on my shoes, grabbed my keys, and left the apartment without locking the door. The air outside felt sharper than it should have, like the night had decided to participate. The drive to the bar took 12 minutes. I know because I watched the numbers on the dashboard like they mattered. Traffic lights blurred into permission rather than obstacles. My phone buzzed again at a red light, but I did not look. I already knew who it was not. The bar was louder in person. Noise does not translate properly through a screen, and what I heard when I opened the door was not music so much as collision. Bodies, voices, laughter, spilled drinks, shouted lyrics that never landed on the right notes. The smell of alcohol and sweat hung heavy, the kind that sticks to your clothes without asking. I scanned the room once and did not see her. For half a second, relief tried to sneak in. Then I remembered the angle of the video, the mirror, the raised platform. I pushed forward, weaving through people who barely registered me as a person. Someone spilled a drink on my sleeve and shouted an apology that did not wait for acknowledgement. The chanting started again before I saw why. There was movement near the bar, upward and confident, and the crowd leaned in as if gravity worked differently there. Phones went up. Cheers followed. I caught a glimpse of her hair first, then her shoulders, then the same dress from the video, unmistakable even under different lights. Vera was back on the counter. One of the men was gone, replaced by another, taller, older, better dressed. He wore a jacket that did not belong in a place like this, and he looked far too comfortable being exactly where he was. She laughed at something he said, her hand resting on his chest like it had memorized the shape. I stopped moving. There is a moment, sometimes, when your body understands something before your mind finishes assembling it. My feet rooted to the floor. My hands clenched without instruction. My breathing shifted, shallow and controlled, as if my system had decided panic would be inefficient. I felt eyes on me. At first I thought it was coincidence, the way people glance at strangers in crowded rooms. Then I realized the looks were directional, small ripples of attention turning toward me and then back to her. Someone near me whispered something I could not hear, and another person laughed, not kindly. Yana was right. This was not hidden. This was not private. This was theater. I pushed forward again, more deliberately this time. The crowd resisted without meaning to. A shoulder bumped into me. A hand pressed against my chest, then withdrew. Someone shouted that I needed to relax. Someone else told me to enjoy the show. As I got closer, I noticed faces I recognized. Two people from Vera's office stood near the bar, drinks in hand, watching with expressions that suggested this was expected. One of them noticed me and went still, the smile fading just enough to matter. The other turned away quickly, pretending to be very interested in the bartender. The story Vera had told me earlier in the day rearranged itself in my head, pieces clicking into new positions that made far more sense than the original version ever had. The man in the jacket leaned in toward her. She responded immediately, her body angling to meet his. The crowd reacted, louder now, sensing escalation. Phones adjusted. Someone climbed onto a chair for a better angle. I stepped closer, close enough that I could hear her voice over the noise. She said his name. I did not catch it at first, but then she repeated it, slower, deliberate, like she wanted the sound to stick. Milos. The name meant nothing to me in isolation, but my brain filed it away anyway, the way it does when it knows it will need the information later. A security guard moved toward the bar, not to stop her, but to keep the crowd from spilling over completely. He glanced at me as I passed, assessing whether I was a problem worth addressing. I did not give him a reason yet. I was 10 feet away when Vera looked down. Her eyes found mine in a way that suggested instinct rather than recognition. Her smile held for half a second longer than it should have, then fell apart. Not dramatically, not with guilt or shock. It simply disappeared, replaced by calculation. She did not step down. She did not cover herself or pull away from the man beside her. Instead, she straightened, lifted her chin, and looked directly at me as if daring the moment to choose a direction. The chanting faltered, confused by the shift in energy. A few people noticed the change and followed her gaze. Phones tilted. Someone whispered my role into the narrative, and the room adjusted accordingly. Vera opened her mouth, as if to say something, but whatever she had planned did not survive contact with reality. The man beside her looked down at me, curious rather than concerned, as if I were an interruption rather than a threat. I took the last step forward. The space between us collapsed under the weight of witnesses, music, and a lie that no longer had anywhere to hide. The noise never fully stopped, but it changed shape. The chanting lost its rhythm, thinning into scattered reactions as people realized there was a story unfolding that was no longer about entertainment. Phones stayed raised. That part did not change. What changed was the direction they pointed. Vera stayed on the counter longer than made sense. She did not climb down immediately, which told me more than any explanation ever could. The man beside her, Milos, followed her lead, his posture relaxed, his arm still where it had been, as if the situation belonged to him. He looked down at me again, this time with a smile that suggested curiosity mixed with amusement. I did not speak. I did not need to. The room had already begun assigning roles, and silence, it turns out, is unsettling when people expect noise. Someone behind me laughed, not cruelly, but reflexively, the way people laugh when tension needs an outlet. Another person whispered something about drama. The bartender slammed a bottle down harder than necessary, signaling that this had crossed into inconvenience. Vera finally moved. She crouched slightly, steadying herself, then stepped down onto the narrow service ledge behind the bar. A staff member reached out to help her, but she waved him off, brushing past as if she belonged there. When she landed on the floor, her feet slipped for half a second before she caught herself. Her eyes never left mine. Up close, I noticed details that the video had not captured. Her lipstick was smeared, but not carelessly. Her dress had been adjusted to sit exactly where she wanted it. This was not chaos. This was control wearing the costume of recklessness. She said my name once. Not loudly, not softly, just enough to test whether it would land. It did not. Milos stepped down beside her, placing himself between us without appearing to do so. He angled his body slightly, a practiced move, the kind people learn when they spend time in rooms where positioning matters. He extended a hand toward me, palm open, like this was a networking event instead of a public unraveling. I ignored it. That was when the first security guard arrived properly, not hovering this time, but committed. He looked at Vera, then at Milos, then at me, scanning for cues. His eyes lingered on my clenched fists before returning to my face. "You need to take this outside," he said, addressing no one in particular, which meant everyone. Vera nodded immediately. She agreed too quickly, which made it clear she had been preparing for this outcome. She turned toward me, gesturing vaguely toward the exit as if we were partners navigating a minor inconvenience. I stayed where I was. The crowd leaned in again, sensing friction. Someone shouted something about a fight. Someone else cheered prematurely. A phone flash went off, unnecessary and aggressive. Milos leaned closer to Vera, murmuring something I could not hear. She nodded, her expression sharpening, then turned back to me with a look that felt rehearsed. "This isn't the place," she said, her voice steady enough to carry. "You're making a scene." The sentence landed wrong. Not because it was untrue in isolation, but because of where we were standing and why. A few people nearby reacted audibly, the sound somewhere between disbelief and interest. The security guard stepped closer to me. "I'm fine," I said, finally, keeping my voice even. "I'm not the one on the bar." The guard hesitated. He looked at Vera again, then at Milos, whose jacket and calm demeanor seemed to carry weight here. The calculation was visible. I could almost see the decision forming. Another guard appeared, drawn by the attention. This one went straight to Milos, speaking quietly, deferentially. Milos nodded, then glanced at Vera. She placed a hand on his arm, not urgently, but familiarly. I caught fragments of their conversation as the music surged and dipped. Something about being recognized. Something about keeping things smooth. The first guard turned back to me. "You need to step outside," he said, more firmly this time. Vera did not object. That was when I understood something fundamental about the night. The crowd had already decided I was the variable, not the constant. I was the interruption, the element that did not belong. She, on the other hand, had been part of the environment long enough to be accepted. I took a breath, nodded once, and turned toward the exit. The walkout felt longer than it should have. People parted just enough to let me through, eyes tracking me openly now. I heard my name again, whispered, mispronounced, guessed. Someone brushed my shoulder deliberately. Someone else patted my back in what might have been sympathy or mockery. Outside, the air was colder. The sound dropped off abruptly, replaced by the dull hum of traffic and distant laughter leaking through the door every time it opened. The guard stayed with me, arms crossed, watching as if I might combust. Less than a minute passed before the door opened again. Vera stepped out first, her expression already rearranged into something composed and public. Milos followed, then one of her co-workers, a woman I recognized from a company dinner months earlier. She avoided my eyes entirely. Vera stopped a few feet away from me. "This didn't have to happen like this," she said. The guard glanced between us, then took a step back, signaling he would intervene if necessary, but was willing to let this play out. I looked at Vera properly for the first time since she had seen me in the crowd. "I came because you said you were at dinner," I said. "With co-workers." She exhaled slowly, as if bracing herself. "I was," she replied. "We came here after." The explanation was thin, but she delivered it with confidence, banking on momentum rather than logic. Milos cleared his throat. "I don't think this is productive," he said, addressing me directly now. "There's been a misunderstanding." I laughed once, quietly, surprised by the sound of it. The co-worker shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking. "This is getting blown out of proportion," she said. "It was just celebrating." The word echoed strangely. Celebrating what? Exactly, remained unspoken. I looked at Milos more closely then, really looked. He was older than I had initially thought, his confidence worn smooth by repetition. His watch was expensive but understated. His shoes were clean despite the bar floor. He was not here by accident. "What do you do?" I asked him. He smiled, polite and cautious. "I work with your fiancée," he said. "On regional accounts." That was when the shape of the evening shifted again. Earlier that day, Vera had mentioned a breakthrough, a deal that had taken months to close. She had sounded relieved, almost buoyant, talking about how much pressure was finally off her shoulders. I had congratulated her without asking for details, trusting that they would come later. I thought about the payment notification I had glanced at on my phone that afternoon and dismissed as routine. A large transfer from our joint account to cover what she had called a temporary expense. I looked back at her. "This was about the deal," I said. She did not deny it. The coworker stiffened. Milos's smile thinned just slightly. "We should go," Vera said, suddenly decisive. "We can talk later." Later was doing a lot of work in that sentence. I stepped closer, lowering my voice, not because I was afraid of being overheard, but because I did not want the crowd to have the satisfaction. "There isn't a later," I said. "You made sure of that." Her jaw tightened. For the first time that night, something like irritation broke through her composure. "You're reacting emotionally," she said. "This isn't how adults handle things." The guard shifted again, clearly ready to end this. Milos placed a hand lightly on Vera's back, guiding her away from me. It was an intimate gesture, subtle and practiced, and it told me everything I needed to know about how long this had been happening. As they walked away, phones followed. Someone shouted Vera's name. Someone else shouted mine. I stood there until the door closed behind them and the noise swallowed the moment whole. Then my phone buzzed. It was Yana again. This time there was no video. Just a message. There are more angles. People I know. This is already spreading. I put the phone back in my pocket and looked at the bar entrance, the neon light flickering above it like a warning sign that no one ever listens to. The night was far from over. I did not go home right away. Sitting in the car felt impossible, like the space was too small to hold everything that had just been set in motion. I drove instead, not fast, not slow, just enough to keep my thoughts from piling up in one place. Streetlights passed in orderly intervals, indifferent to what they illuminated. At a red light, my phone buzzed again. Then again. I pulled over without thinking about where. Yana had sent 3 more messages by the time I stopped. One was a screenshot. Another was a short video clip from a different angle. The third was a list of names, people I recognized from Vera's work and a few I did not. I opened the screenshot first. It was already on social media. Not a private message. Not a group chat leak. A public post, framed like content rather than evidence. Someone had captioned it with something flippant, something designed to invite commentary. The likes were climbing fast. Comments scrolled beneath it in a mix of humor, judgment, and speculation. Some people tagged friends. Some tagged accounts I recognized from Vera's professional circle. The clip that followed was worse. It showed the moment I stepped into the frame near the bar. My face was visible, confused enough to be unmistakable. Someone had slowed it down, zoomed in, added text that implied a narrative I had never agreed to participate in. The crowd's noise was louder from this angle, their chanting clearer, their laughter sharper. This was no longer a private betrayal. It had been converted into a format people understood and consumed without context. I sat there long enough for the engine to cool. By the time I got home, my phone battery was down to 12%. Notifications stacked on top of each other, names repeating, numbers I did not recognize mixed in with ones I did. I ignored them all and went inside. The apartment felt wrong immediately. Nothing had changed physically, but the silence had weight now. The couch still had the throw pillow Vera like folded exactly the way she preferred. Her shoes were by the door, lined up neatly, as if order could be preserved independently of intent. I plugged my phone in and watched the screen light up with messages as it charged. My mother had called twice. A cousin I had not spoken to in years had sent a single line asking if what she saw was real. One of the wedding vendors had emailed about needing to discuss a scheduling concern. That one stopped me. I opened it. The message was careful, professional, apologetic without committing to anything. They had seen something circulating and wanted to clarify whether there were any issues that might affect the event. They used the word optics once, which told me they had already decided how this looked. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The video was everywhere now. Different uploads, different captions, each one slightly altered to suit the audience it was aimed at. Some cut out my arrival entirely. Some focused on it. One included a freeze frame of Vera kissing Milos, highlighted like a still from a broadcast. I noticed patterns as I scrolled. The people defending her used language that suggested distance. They talked about privacy, about context, about how relationships were complicated. None of them addressed the lie, the timing, or the money. The people criticizing her were louder, less precise, more interested in spectacle than truth. I closed the browser. The part that mattered was not what strangers thought. It was who had seen it and what they would do next. I opened my banking app. The transfer from earlier that day was still there. The amount was not small. It was marked as cleared. I checked our joint account history going back a month, then 3. Patterns emerged quickly once I knew to look for them. Smaller transfers, spaced out, each one justified at the time by something that had sounded reasonable. I checked the notes attached to the payments. Consulting expense, client entertainment, temporary coverage. I leaned back in the chair, the room tilting slightly as the implications settled in. My phone rang. This time I answered. It was Vera's mother. She did not waste time on pleasantries. She asked if I was safe, then immediately asked what had happened. Her voice was tight, controlled, carrying the strain of someone who had already spent the night explaining something she did not fully understand. I told her what I had seen. I did not embellish. I did not editorialize. I stuck to observable facts. There was a pause on the other end. She says it wasn't what it looked like, her mother said finally. That's convenient, I replied. Another pause. She says you overreacted. I almost smiled at that. I was invited into it, I said. By video. Her mother sighed, a sound that carried years of exhaustion. We'll talk tomorrow, she said. This needs to be handled carefully. Carefully for whom? She did not specify. The call ended. I did not feel relieved. A message came in from someone at Vera's company. Not a friend. Someone higher up than that. It was brief. Formal. It asked if I was aware of any impropriety related to a regional account that might involve a conflict of interest. They did not mention Vera by name, but they did not need to. I stared at the screen. This was the point where everything could still be framed as misunderstanding if handled quietly. This was also the point where silence would make me complicit in something I had never agreed to. I thought about the way Milos had stood between us, about the way Vera had not denied anything, about the money. I replied. I said I had concerns. I said I was reviewing financial records. I said I would cooperate fully if asked. I did not accuse. I did not threaten. I left the door open and waited for them to walk through it. The response came faster than I expected. They thanked me. They said compliance would be in touch. I closed the laptop and stood up. Vera came home after midnight. I heard the key in the lock before the door opened. Her movements were quieter than usual, cautious, like she was entering a room that might reject her. She stopped when she saw me standing in the kitchen, the light still on. For a moment, we looked at each other like strangers forced into proximity by circumstance. She spoke first. "This has gotten out of hand," she said. I did not respond. She took a step closer, then another, stopping when the distance felt deliberate. "You didn't have to escalate it," she continued. "You could have waited." I gestured vaguely toward the living room, toward the unseen internet beyond it. "You performed it," I said. "I just arrived." Her mouth tightened. "You're letting people destroy me," she said. The phrasing was interesting. Not you are destroying me. Now we did this together. People. Abstract. Convenient. "I didn't upload anything," I replied. "You didn't stop it." I laughed then, not out of humor, but disbelief. "You didn't stop anything tonight," I said. "You started it." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it reflexively, then caught herself. The movement was small, but it told me enough. "They're panicking," she said. "My boss. My team." I nodded. "That happens," I said, "when risk becomes visible." She stared at me, searching for something familiar to anchor herself to. "We can fix this," she said, "if you don't talk to anyone else." The offer hung between us, heavy with implication. "I already did," I replied. Her face changed. Not shock, not anger, fear. "What did you say?" she asked. "The truth," I said. "About what I know? About what I paid for." She looked away, pacing now, the controlled confidence from earlier gone. She ran a hand through her hair, stopped, then did it again, like the repetition might produce a different outcome. "You don't understand how this works," she said. "They'll make an example." I watched her carefully. "They should," I said. She stopped pacing. "You're doing this because you're hurt," she said. "You're trying to punish me." I shook my head. "I'm protecting myself," I replied. "You used my name and my money." Silence stretched. Outside, a car alarm went off briefly, then stopped. Somewhere upstairs, someone laughed. Vera picked up her bag. "I'm staying with my parents," she said. I nodded. "That's probably best," I said. She paused at the door, turning back once more. "This isn't over," she said. I met her eyes. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." The door closed behind her, and for the first time that night, the apartment felt honest. My phone buzzed again. Compliance. They wanted to meet in the morning. I sat down at the table, exhaustion settling in alongside clarity. The video had stopped being entertainment. Now it was evidence. The meeting with compliance happened in a room that was too clean for the mess it was designed to contain. Glass walls, neutral chairs, a table wide enough to keep everyone from feeling cornered. They offered water. I declined. 2 people took notes. A third asked questions without writing anything down, which told me more about their role than their title ever could. I answered carefully, not because I was afraid, but because precision mattered now. I laid out the timeline. The dinner claim. The video. The names I recognized. The transfers. I handed over statements, screenshots, dates. I explained what I knew and made it clear where my knowledge ended. They did not interrupt. When I finished, one of them asked a single question that cut through everything else. "Did you authorize those payments for client entertainment involving Mr. Milos?" I said no. They thanked me again, this time without warmth. Vera did not come back to the apartment that week. Her mother called once more, asking if we could slow things down, if there was a way to resolve this quietly. I told her the truth had already decided the volume. She did not argue after that. She sounded tired, older than the last time we spoke. The company acted faster than I expected. Vera was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The phrasing was neutral, but the effect was immediate. Her access was cut. Her email went dark. The coworkers who had stood near the bar stopped returning her calls. Celebration does not age well when it becomes liability. Milos disappeared first. His name vanished from internal documents, then from LinkedIn. Someone told Yana he had taken a sudden leave for personal reasons. Someone else said he was consulting overseas. No one said it confidently. Men like him rely on ambiguity when certainty stops serving them. The video kept circulating, but the tone changed. What had started as spectacle hardened into judgment once official language entered the conversation. People began referencing policy, conflict of interest, ethics. The comments lost their humor and gained distance. That is how you know something is no longer entertainment. Wedding vendors followed the trend. The venue emailed first, citing a morality clause buried deep in the contract. They were willing to refund part of the deposit, not all. The photographer canceled outright. The caterer asked for confirmation that the event was still happening before proceeding further. I sent one response. The wedding was off. The word spread faster than the video ever had. Vera tried to call me 2 nights later. I let it ring. She left a message, then another. In the third, her voice broke in a way that might have meant something a week earlier. She asked me to reconsider. She said she had made mistakes. She said she felt attacked. I deleted the messages without listening all the way through. The investigation concluded in less than a month. Vera was terminated for violations related to conflict of interest, misuse of funds, and conduct damaging to the company's reputation. The letter was clinical. It did not mention the bar. It did not mention the video. It did not need to. The facts spoke in quieter language. There was no severance. Her professional network collapsed almost immediately. Job postings she applied to disappeared after interviews. Recruiters stopped responding. One of her former colleagues told Yana that no one wanted to be associated with someone who came with documentation attached. She blamed me publicly, briefly. She posted something vague about betrayal and weaponized honesty. It gained traction for a day, then stalled when people asked questions she could not answer without reopening wounds she wanted closed. The post came down. The financial separation took longer. We met once, in a lawyer's office, with a mediator who looked like he had seen worse and expected worse still. Vera tried to argue that the transfers were shared decisions, that I had benefited indirectly. I presented the records. The mediator nodded. The argument dissolved. I recovered most of what had been taken. Not all. Some losses do not return simply because they were documented. Vera moved back in with her parents. Her father did not speak during the meeting where that decision was made. Her mother did all the talking, careful and apologetic. I did not attend. Yana told me afterward. She had been there to support, not to intervene. Milos never resurfaced. Someone sent me an article months later about a consulting firm under investigation for irregularities tied to regional contracts. His name was not mentioned. It did not have to be. Life did not reset. It reorganized. Friends chose sides quietly. Some drifted away without explanation. Others checked in more often than before, cautious but present. The apartment felt different once I changed the furniture layout, like it had accepted the new reality without complaint. I stopped checking social media. The video still existed somewhere, but it no longer mattered. It had done its work. One evening, months later, I ran into Vera unexpectedly at a grocery store. She looked thinner, sharper around the edges. She avoided my eyes until it was impossible not to acknowledge each other. We nodded. Nothing more. That was enough. Consequences do not always arrive with drama. Sometimes they settle in slowly, reshaping lives without asking permission. She lost a career built on proximity to power. She lost credibility that had taken years to assemble. She lost relationships that only functioned in the absence of scrutiny. I lost a future I had planned around someone who did not exist the way I thought she did. What remained was quieter, smaller, honest. And that, in the end, was not something a crowd could chant away.
Tuesday, can you give me that kind of week
Sure.
so people can hear that?
So I recommend lifting 3, 4, or 5 times per week, and you can divide up the muscle work however you want. If you're doing 3 workouts, you would do 3 full body workouts. Now, you don't have to work every single muscle group in each workout. So let's say Monday, you've got glutes, quads, chest, back, shoulders. And then you take a recovery day on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, maybe you're hitting abs, glutes again, shoulders, quads, whatever. Another recovery day. And then Friday, you're hitting all the muscle groups that you hadn't worked, and then maybe 1 or 2 other ones. So that you're getting, for the most part, you're hitting each muscle group at least once and many of them twice.
And on those days off, are you doing cardio, walking, just resting?
Yes, you can.
I thought you were going to say like completely watch Netflix on those days, Tamsin.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
that's
that
not
be
what you're going to
nice?
say.
And sometimes that's exactly what your body needs. Like your body will sometimes beg for a recovery day, and I recommend listening. Like you don't need to squeeze in extra cardio. Like sometimes recovering is your best, most productive tool in certain moments. But I like to say stay active overall every day of the week. I recommend 150 minutes of light to moderate intensity cardio per week in addition to your strength training routine.
Okay.
Now that sounds like a lot. And those are your days off lifting where you can get in your walking or your jogging or whatever form of cardio you enjoy. So you can do that on your days off. Or what I do is I just